you're here or listening, or we're live, wherever you are. It is my honor to be here with you all today. This is the Sabbath day. What a beautiful time. And I get a special blessing today because I get one of my dearest friends in a long, long time. I won't tell you how long, but his beard wasn't black, wasn't gray back in the day. And one of my dearest friends from many years ago, and all up to date, currently, Chauncey Anthony Young. Many of us know him by Tony, others by Chauncey, but he is a force to be reckoned with in the spiritual realm, and just a good, good friend. So I want to let him say hello to you and greet everybody. If you would, Tom.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. It's exciting to be in Texarkana, and that's not just because of where we just left, but we are moving back home, and we're excited about it. Yeah, we're excited about it. We feel like it's really purposeful. We feel like God's doing something here and wants us to be a part of it. I'll say this, and then I'll give it back to Papa B. And so for anybody that don't know us, that's what I call him, Papa B. I know you call him Bill, right? But one of the things that I missed being away from here is the conversations that Papa B and I would have in person. And those conversations, they started in his home, not where he lives now, but in another location. And I stayed with him a few days, and we would get around the kitchen table, and the first thing he would say was, "Tony, what's the Lord saying?" And that would spark such a beautiful conversation, and that just led into our relationship developing over time. And so when I left, and I had to move to Northeast Arkansas, and we've had really good time there. But before I left, I was given a word from one of the guys that's no longer here in the fellowship, but he's here in Browntown. He said to me, he says, there's been waves that have come. He says, I'm going to give you the best way I can say this, right? He says, I'm an old surfer. I'm from LA, and this is what we did. So it's going to be a surfing analogy, but hopefully you hear what I'm saying. He says, there have been waves that have come in the spirit realm, so to speak, in the kingdom or whatever, and you feel like you've missed those waves, right? That you were not able to take advantage of what God was doing. And he said, but I feel the Lord telling me to tell you that you won't miss the next wave.
Yeah.
He says, God is going to put you in the path of the wave. And so I feel that there are some waves coming this way, and God has sent me home to get in the path of it. And I think many of you are already in the path of the wave, and I just come home to join you. Amen. And so get our surfboards out and let's ride the wave.
Amen. Let us do ride the waves. If you would stand with me just for a few seconds, what I wish to do is go ahead and sing the Baruch over everyone. And this, if you not know what this is the traditional call to worship in the Hebrew ways of thinking, and it basically says, "Blessed are you who is blessed. Blessed is the one who is blessed and the blesser of all things. Blessed is the one who sets us apart from all other peoples of the earth and gives us his Torah." So that's what it says in English. In Hebrew, it goes like this. Sing it if you know it. If you don't know it, that's okay. Baruch hu Adonai Hamorah. Baruch Adonai Hamorah Leolam Vayeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten your instructions, your commandments from us. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. We are in the continuing saga of the Torah. This is not just a source of material we go looking for sermons out of and find a certain verse we like. We follow a sequence of events. And the sequence of the Torah is our story. It is not just a story. This is our story. And because it's our story, we connect with it, we rehearse it, we read it, we live it. We relive it every year. And we relive it in sequence according to the week of the year that we're in. This week we're in parsha number 19, the 19th subdivision of the Torah, the 19th part of our story. And this is called Terumah. You see it written on the board. For those of you who can see the board. Terumah is a very special word. We're going to talk about that word. I want to just say and warn you, it is related to another word, an English word. The word terumah has the letters Terumah. If you know your English very well, you understand there's an English word that has those same sounds in it. It's called trauma. Is it just a linguistic coincidence? Is it just a matter of the fact that the English has a word that has the same sounds as the Hebrew word, as terumah? Or is there possibly a connection between the two? Is there some level at which the idea of what the Holy One's telling us in Terumah is an antidote for the world's trauma? Is it indeed this is a pattern, a protocol eternally set in motion for us to have our trauma healed and overcome and transcended, and that has become the people He called us to be? So that's where we're going to start with this process. I call this installment 7 of the Great Nation Building Chronicles. Tony, if you have any comments or thoughts about the idea of what He's doing in us to make us a great nation, how did it all start?
Yes, so one of the things when Papa and I, when we first started talking about this, and we had a conversation last night, on my way here, one of the things that when we talk about the Great Nation Building, this discourse that we're in right now, I think a lot of times we fail to see ourselves the way He sees us, right? And so when we're going to look at this nation, this group, this highly potential group that's coming out of Egypt, that's going to have trauma, right?
Major trauma.
Major trauma, and to themselves, they may not look like the beautiful people that they're becoming. And so I thought of a song that Misty Edwards wrote.
Oh yes.
And I think it totally fits this, this idea of us coming out, this nation being groomed and developed into these beautiful people. And so, go ahead.
Before we get into this, from the standpoint of copyright, I want to attribute copyright to Misty Edwards of the International House of Prayer.
Correct. And Misty is a major part of what they're doing and what they have done for years. I think she's been there over 20 years doing this. But this is her song, and this is what she said in her song. And she's speaking on behalf of God to His people, right? And so she said, and this is God choosing us. So think about this, because we're part of this. I knew what I was getting into when I called you. I knew what I was getting into when I said your name, but I said it just the same. I knew what I was getting into, but I still want you. I knew what I was getting into. I still chose you. I knew what I was getting into. I still want you. I knew what I was getting into. I still said your name, and I said it just the same. I'm not shocked by your weakness. I'm not shocked even by your sin. I'm not shocked by your brokenness. I knew what I was getting into. That's such an empowering thought to me. And when you hear her sing it, it isn't even that much more. But that's such an empowering thought to me, because when I think of the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, God knew what He was getting into. They're going to react. They're going to have trauma responses, right? And our Creator knew exactly what he was getting into when he called him, and he called him just to say, well, let's apply that to ourselves, because we're in this story today. He knows exactly who we are, and he knows the trauma that he's calling us out of, and he knows what he's getting into. And he's not ashamed. He's not embarrassed by us. He's not afraid of our trauma. In fact, he's so invested in our lives that he calls our names regardless, and especially because he knows the trauma that's associated with our lives.
Amen.
A key factor in that is that he doesn't call us by our trauma. We may tend to do that. We call ourselves by the trauma we have experienced. It's kind of like going to a hospital, and you listen to the doctors talk, and they're talking about the appendectomy in room 4. And you know who that appendectomy is. That's not who, she's not an appendectomy. That's your mother, or that's your sister, or that's your daughter, or that's your brother. This is a real person. But after people, and we tend to do that when we have experience, and every human being has experienced trauma. Trauma is so severe that if you knew what it was, you wouldn't trade yours for it. I know there's a lot of mindsets in the world that think they don't have any trauma. They're all whatever. They get whatever they want, and they're all rich and whatever the case may be. If you knew their trauma, you wouldn't want it. You take yours seriously. You can handle folks' deal about what you got. Now the issue is we consider ourselves by our trauma's name, but he calls us by our real name, by who we really are, because he sees in us something special. Tony, and for all of you, this is a season. All the Holy One's ways come in times and seasons. And this is the season of getting ready for the Esther story. We're going to this great idea of, if anyone in the world was traumatized, probably murdered, no, we don't know exactly how they died, had to conceal her identity and her persona, who she was, her covenant relation, even had to change her name just to survive in the culture. And then as she's beginning to come to maturity, she's captured, taken into custody, made a slave in the household of Ahasuerus, the king, because he wants a wife. And she has no choice in the matter. She doesn't get to run for this office. She is chosen among many thousands of other traumatized young women taken away from their homes and their houses without the prospect of real marriage, to become solely in the part of the harem of a Persian pagan king. That's her trauma. That's who she would think of herself as. But the Holy One knew something that she didn't know. That behind that Esther character that she put on, the trauma name that she had worn, underneath all that, there was Hadassah, the beautiful flower. That's what Hadassah means. It means like a rose or a beautiful flower. She was this flower waiting to bloom. She was this beautiful, and he saw her and he says, "You are not Esther. You're my flower." And he calls her forth, and that's the season we're in. Whoever you think you are, or the world has taught you are, that is not who you are. You are the one he created, the one he designed, the one he sees great beauty in. If you could stop what you're doing and doing right now and just understand this, he sees the beauty he created in you, not the trauma the world has inflicted upon you. And he wants to call forth the beauty that he sees and he created in you for your time at such a time as this. And that's what we're in right now, the time of Esther fading and Hadassah arising and coming forth and becoming to the place and to the role in the earth that we're supposed to play. Any more thoughts on that, Tony? Okay, good. So we're in this time of Hadassah arising, of coming forth beauty from ashes. I mean, we could all talk about things and times and maybe sequences and maybe current events in our life or in our world that cause us to feel like we're living in an ash heap. Or maybe we are an ash heap. Maybe we're just the debris of all the things that have happened to us, the fallout. And he says, no, don't ever let yourself go that route. To the contrary, what you are is waiting to be called forth, waiting to come out of those piles of ashes. Out of ashes, beauty arise. Beauty in you arise. The beauty of who you are. Now you have to be connected to a beauty realm to be able to do that. To understand there is something in this world that transcends the normative, transcends the common, the ordinary, transcends the pain-causing, trauma-causing things of this world. There is another realm. There is a secret pathway. There's a secret of the stairs that Solomon learned, the place to go into its road from the king's house into the temple. The secret of the stairs. There's a secret of ascent to go out of this realm, to be able to access the beauty realm of our God and know that's where we really belong. That's why he sees beauty in us, is because the spark of that beauty realm resides in our soul, in our heart, in our mind, in our lives, and he has been sprinkling little parts of that, particles of that beauty throughout every experience, and that's why we're still here. When we should have died, when we should have failed, when we should have been swept away, he's awakened a spark of beauty that somehow allowed us to overcome and survive. And he wants now to put together those scattered sparks and bring us forth in the fullness of the beauty. So we're introducing this week the healing and empowering realm of divine beauty. If all we have is trauma, then we don't have much of a good news message. If that's all we talk about, if that's all we think about, if that's what controls our emotions, if that's what controls our behavior, and what dominates our conversations, our trauma or somebody else's trauma, this injustice or that injustice, if that's what the things of this common world we obsess about that, then we are missing the greatest reason we are alive, which is to pull forth out of the beauty realm of God the healing powers of his presence, the healing powers of his words and his protocols, and have us transition from trauma into beauty. That is the call. The realm of divine beauty. So I'm going to call upon you. Don't usually do this. I try not to tell you what to do as you're sitting in your chairs. But this is so important and such a transformational concept that I'm going to ask you, I'm going to violate my rule today, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and I want you to start envisioning the beauty realm of God. And we can start with the tabernacle, or the throne room, or the chambers of the Holy One, or the Ark of the Covenant, and the gold, shimmering gold, and the outspread wings of the cherubim. You can start with the table filled with showbread, these beautiful loaves that tell you it's sprinkled with frankincense. You can start with the menorah and the 7 branches and the pomegranate shape imagery, and then the gold that shimmers and the fires that burn. You can think about the altar of incense, the golden altar of incense, and the beautiful sweet-smelling smoke arising. Well, I don't care what it is you focus on. Or the bronze laver, the brazen laver, where there's water flowing, living water pouring out and swirling and offering itself to you and filling the air with a mist. If you can picture whichever one it usually will tell you what your callings are when you picture what imagery you see from the tabernacle, what your specific larger callings are. But whatever it is, spend a few seconds. Get used to this. Being able to step out of the negativity you see and get into that other realm of beauty realm of God. Okay, you're released from your exercise, but I hope that what that becomes is a normal thing for you to do every day, multiple times a day. The tabernacle is given to us. This whole discourse about the Mishkan is given to us so that we learn how to transcend this world and enter into the beauty realm, the majesty realm, the realm of healing and health. If we don't get that, then we don't understand what he's done for us. And why it says that things like in John 1:14, it says, and he was made flesh. Yeshua, talking about the Messiah, was made flesh. And what did he do among us?
Well,
he tabernacled among us. He became the tabernacle unto us. He became the place where we would go to for this healing. As it was. The word tabernacle is so much more than dwelt, even though dwelt is one aspect of it. Mishkan is to dwell, and tabernacle is the word that we get from Mishkan. So there's that. And then Revelation 21. This Revelation 21 passage is really amazing. You realize there's no there's no time in the eternal realm. We live according to a time schedule. But what's written in John 1:14, what's written in Exodus 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, what's written in all these places is the same thing as written in Revelation 21, beginning with verse 3. And let's see if I can find that here, and I want to read that to you, because I want you to understand why this is a healing room. Here it is. And I heard, this is the Revelator John, he's seeing things that are eternal, not temporal. He said, and I heard a voice from heaven say, now remember the tabernacle is about creator speak and us getting in the realm of creator speak. And I heard the voice from heaven say, behold, look, open your eyes. Close your eyes, open your eyes. But somehow look, behold, the tabernacle of God will be with men, and he will dwell with us, and he will be our God, and we will be his people. And God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. And there will be no more death and dying. There will be no more sorrow nor crying. There will be no more pain, for the former things will pass away. I think many teach this as if it was going to be someplace in heaven after we all die. This is someplace on earth now as we all live. The key factor is to know the secret of the stairs, to understand the passageway of the mind and the heart, be able to transcend the things. And when we go to the tabernacle, in the mind and in the heart, when we go to the tabernacle, no matter what is happening on the outside, there is no sorrow. There is no sighing. There is no crying. There are no tears. There is no pain. There is no suffering, because we have to go to a healing room. And that is what is in the tabernacle. That is what the tabernacle is made of. It is separate little healing rooms for different levels of trauma that we've experienced in our life. Tony, I'm going to kind of give this over to you and let you express any thoughts you might have about that.
One of the things that that's so attractive about this parsha, when we think about it, I want to draw us into it and make it personal just for a second. When we think about Shemot, the parsha that started this second download.
Yeah, the first section of Exodus.
Yeah. With Shemot, he called them up out of Egypt by name, right? Yeah. This was very intentional, right? I like this because that gives me hope as someone who's having to trust his leadership, in that he can see me, he can see us in our state of existing and having to function in the world that we function in. We're sort of dealing with the mystery Babylon environment, culture. And like they were dealing with the Egyptian culture, they were called up out of that culture, though they still had to deal with the mind and the things the trauma that came with that culture. They came up out of there, but now he's preparing them to live beyond that, to live beyond the Egyptian culture. So when he calls us out, he's also going to equip, he's going to prepare us to be able to function. And a part of that is dealing with our trauma. And this is where we're going here in a little bit. But he called us by name. He knows exactly who we are. And so when he calls us, he's calling our bloodlines into this process. And I just wanted to put that back out there, because when we answer that call to come up out of the culture, he says, come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord, and I'll receive you. What he's doing is he's calling our bloodline. And I like what you say, I learned this here, that his heart is to redeem all bloodlines. and to restore creation to its original Edenic state of beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom. He's going to do that, and he's already started that process, and that's why the cry in our hearts right now is to come up out of these places, because we know we were not designed or called by God to be filled with trauma, right? And so he's preparing us to come out of this place, and he's doing it through, I like what you call, through these protocols, right? So, and you're going to get into that later. But what he's doing is he's showing us that we were made for more than this. We were made for more than trauma. We were made for more than pain and tears and the suffering. But he did allow it, right? And now he's calling us up out of this place. And so we go to Shemot. The next favorite part of this cycle for me was Parsha Bo, right? Because he's going to go with us. He says, come, let us go to Pharaoh. He's going to go with us to address
the trauma causers.
The trauma causers. I think sometimes we feel alone, and we start looking at the pain, and we start looking at the culture and the counterculture to the kingdom, and we start getting consumed, and we start obsessing over what's happening around us. And so he has to call us, and I like the fact that he called them by name. That's so important to me right now. That means he knows specifically who we are and where we are, and he knows how to call us up out of those places. And right now, I feel like that's where we are as individuals. We're being called up out of a culture that is obsessed with certain things, that if we get obsessed with it, we get distracted from the beauty realm.
Exactly. You know, the issue of calling by name is so significant. It goes back to the beginning of Torah and the Garden of Eden. And before the fall, the first thing that happened is with Adam, after Adam was placed in the garden, the Holy One caused every creation that he had made to come before Adam. And Adam was given a task, an assignment, to call it by its name. And not just to give it a title, it's like Joe or Sam or Tom or whatever. It was to call it by its purpose and its meaning and who it really was and how it functioned and filled a position in the entire ecosystem. And that's when he calls us by name. It's not just calling us by our title either. He's calling us by who we are on earth to be and what we're on earth to do and how we fit and what our mission is in the entire grand scheme. Now, some of us will think, well, you know, Bill and Tony, y'all are getting kind of off into never land here. Why don't we just talk about concrete things? Well, I will just tell you that if you're thinking that the New Testament's going to help you to focus your attention on concrete things of logic and reasoning and stuff like that, and intuition, and if that's what you think that's what the New Testament's going to take you into, let me just remind you of a few words of a fellow named Paul, or Shaul was his real name. And in 2 Corinthians 4, as he's talking about overcoming, he says, we do not focus on the things that are seen. That's the things you get logic from and reasoning from and intuition from and imagination. We don't focus on the things that are seen. If you're going to be an overcomer, then you can't focus on the things that are seen, because those things that are seen are temporal. They're temporary. They won't even be here tomorrow or the next day or in 6 years or in 20 years or the next phase of your lifetime. So therefore you can't focus on it. So he says, we do not focus on things which are seen, but on things that are not seen. Beloved, the tabernacle and its furnishings and its avodah, its service, and its beauty realm is what is not seen by the world. We are called to focus on things that are not seen. So he says we do not focus on things that are seen, but on things that are not seen, because the things that are seen are temporary. They're passing. Tomorrow it won't be a big deal to us, or maybe 6 weeks from now it won't be a big deal to us. It won't be that. So we don't focus on those things that we're going to overcome. We focus on things that are not seen. Because the things that are not seen, specifically the things of the tabernacle, the things of his ultimate beauty realm, these things are eternal. they do not change. They do not cease to have their impact and effect. You know, I think coming out of different forms of religion that I've experienced, particularly mostly in the Christian form, I saw this. There is a tendency to write off everything now for the rest of the book, at least Exodus and Leviticus and first part of Numbers at least, to just write it off and saying that is ceremonial law. That is just ceremonial law, and it's all done away with. It's irrelevant now, and it's been superseded by a superior priesthood and a superior this and superior. So we can just ignore all this because it's ceremonial law. No, this is the source of healing for the tribe. This understanding and accessing the portal between the unseen realm and the seen realm is how we overcome and help other people learn to overcome the trauma of life and see healing come, restoration come to the earth. Okay, so I want to kind of get into it now. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts out there in the fellowship? Because we always like to have. Yes, Rick.
This week when I was studying, everything that kept reading to me came out of Matthew 25 verses 14 through 30, the talents. Because here's.
Let me go ahead and stop you just for a second, Rick, to let the people who are watching on the video maybe see this, and I'll get back to this and that. Come on, if you would come up here a little bit. But what Rick is saying is this week he's been reading and hearing and interpreting everything through Matthew chapter 13.
Chapter
14. 25. Oh, yeah, the parable of the talents. So he's going to come up here and he's going to share this. We can stand right here where they can kind of see, if you don't mind, because we can't hear you from on the camera. I'll stand right over here.
All right. Well, with my studies that I did, I was sitting there like Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. I mean, for us, it's a few pages, we can read day in and day out. But it's amazing that when you think about what's going on right now, it started, back where they're still in Egypt. In chapter 11, like you were all talking about. Here they are, through the Egyptians' mourning, getting all these things, not knowing why we have to ask for them. And then slowly but surely, God himself is reaching out to all these people. So you hear that light, you hear that what I'm talking to you, do you see what I'm giving you in dreams? You're going to build something for me. And for us, like I said, it's a few pages, but this is years and months of something going on. And it's kind of amazing how I can correlate what, Yeshua is, talking about in the talents, because this is where everything's being revealed, where yes, you have physical things that you can do in this world, but God can take it and bless it and make it something even more meaningful. I mean, because to be able to get this vision of all the stuff you're going to dedicate to build a dwelling place for God to be with you always. And then, then Yeshua is letting us know that he's that tabernacle now. Right. And it's like these talents that you have is going to be so amazing. Because, in the long run, too, the talents that the disciples didn't know, learn speaking in tongues so they communicate with other people, to reach out to other people. And so this is why I think this is really amazing, because this goes back to even back in Egypt, where all these people who don't really know how to communicate with each other are witnessing what God is doing through Moshe and Aharon. And this is amazing how, everyone's like, oh, the New Testament. It's amazing how you can find what Jesus was talking about and come back to Exodus or come back to Leviticus. And it's like, it's all there. All the time. It's just so amazing. It's just like, why, it's like, why, how did this wall hit me all of a sudden now?
Exactly. Thank you, Rick. Yeah. Well, what's going to happen is that in Parsha Terumah, is that he's going to start by saying, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe and said, and then we're going to have, from that point forward, all creator speak. There's not going to be any more conversation with Moshe. It's all going to be creator speak, recorded by Moshe, word for word, exactly what the Creator said. It's going to go on for chapter after chapter after chapter. This was the largest discourse of divine creator speak so far. We're going to see a bigger one in the book of Leviticus, but this one is the biggest one so far. And I call it the Mishkan discourse, or the dwelling with us discourse, the Emmanuel discourse. His promise to dwell within us, or with us in our midst, and us to dwell with him. So this discourse begins with chapter 25 of Exodus in verse 1, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe and said, and from that point forward, we just go on running with divine discourse. And the first thing he says is, Vayikuli Terumah. And in English, we might translate that, I think in a lot of King James or something says, and take for me an offering. Well, of course, the word offering is where I'm going to suggest, you probably already know because you've been around the Hebrew studies long enough to know that there's probably a secret behind this Hebrew word that the word offering never will touch, never will be able to understand, because that's an English approximation of what we're talking about. So, terumah, vayiku, take up in hand, for me, li, vayiku li, take up for me a terumah, whatever that thing is, whatever that may be. And then he's going to go forward and give us 14 different aspects: gold, silver, and bronze, and red dye, and blue dye, and purple dye, and then special kind of wood that has red streaks all through it, and is a permanent durable wood, chittim wood or acacia wood, as some people call it. And then he's going to go through the issues of precious stones, spices for the oil. Well, wait a minute, stop. First he said, have them build for me, make for me. How do you make for me this and take for me this? We're traumatized slaves, right? Former slaves. We don't do things for him. He does things for us. Hello? This is most of religion. We're traumatized. We're victims. We're in a horrible state down here. We don't do stuff for him. He does stuff for us. He blesses us. He gives us daily bread. He gives us good things. He gives us a life and money and whatever we need. He gives to us. He gives us the hope of the future. He gives us all these. But this Torah says, wait a minute. I've been doing that. I've been doing that a while now. You've had manna every morning. You've had water coming to you from a rock. You've had my cloud to lead you all. I've done everything for you. Now it's time to reach a pendulum change. Now it's time to reach a fulcrum point. Vayiku li. Take it for me. Why? What does this got to do with anything? Why are we suddenly being told that? And then to complicate it, after he tells us these 14 things to take, these 14 precious things that we don't want to give up. We've never owned anything in our life, and finally we've got precious stuff. And we've got it stuck away, hidden so far down where nobody can find it in our gear, because we don't want anybody to take it from us. Think about it. You've been traumatized by being a slave all your life with no possessions or your own whatsoever, and now you've got tons of gold and silver and precious fabrics and dyes, and suddenly someone says, have them take up for me. You say, why would I? No, I need that. This is part of the terumah. This is the idea of healing the trauma. Because you see, traumatized people cannot give. Traumatized people cannot let go because they're afraid they'll never have it again. Because they didn't have it before. And now, so this is a key factor in our transition from wounded and broken people to people who are now overcoming and transforming and becoming beautiful, is to be able to give that which we would want to give. And not just, and he says, don't go and take it from them. He says, I want you to take this terumah from everyone with a willing heart. I want only those whose hearts are bursting with the hunger to give. It doesn't make any sense. Slaves should not give away their gold. No matter how great the vision is, a slave, former slave, beaten, abused all their life, without anything, should not give away a penny of what he's got. So I want you to go out and I want you to raise this elevation, this change, this transition format. I want you to call them to give, and I want only those people who rush forward and give it to you out of abundance and excitement and enthusiasm. And it's like, Moshe would think, this ain't going to happen. Nobody's going to do that. He's going to be surprised. Greatly surprised and shocked, as a matter of fact. Because you see, when the Holy One speaks and when he brings us into his presence, suddenly healing takes place. And that thing that kept us to hold on so tightly to everything we had suddenly releases its grip. This is the power of his speech. This is the power of his presence. And so the first thing he said was, take this stuff. Take these precious things. It isn't about what they give. I could do without the gold and the silver. They need to give the gold and the silver. They need to give the dyes that are precious, that are most valuable dyes in the world. They need to give these things, and the fabric and the cloth. They need to give the precious jewels. They thought this was going to fund their new life. No, they need to give it, and they need to give it exuberantly for the sake of overcoming their trauma. Because you say, I'm not short of this stuff. I don't really need any of this stuff to build what I need to build. They need to give it so that they are partakers of this process. And then part of giving is the healing of the trauma of deprivation. The next thing he says is going to be Va'asu li amigdash. Make, build, form, cause to take shape, cause to be visible for me, again, for me, not for you, for me, a migdash, a place of tabernacle, or a sanctuary, it says in English. To have builded for me a sanctuary, I think it says in the King James Version. Interesting. In the Hebrew it says, Va'asa li migdash. Make, form, cause to take shape for me a place of abiding holiness, kedusha energy, empowering energy. And I will shekanti be'el takam. I will dwell among them, in the midst of them. I will abide in them. Oh, the whole John chapter 15 and the abiding and the vine and the branches and the whole thing should come into your mind here. And he says, I will do this. He says, now, but I want you to do something for me, which is to build. Make for me. Build for me. It's the same word, the same verb that the taskmasters told them to do for Pharaoh back in Egypt. I want you to build for him store cities. The biggest trauma of their life was being forced and conscripted into labor to build somebody else's building. And the Holy One goes there. If you could be triggered, you will be triggered. Now the key factor is, who is doing the triggering? The Holy One is doing the triggering to do the healing. And so he says, I want you to do what broke your heart, what broke your soul, but I want you to do it with a whole different meaning, a whole different perspective for a whole different person. And so the thing about a traumatized person is they can't sink their teeth in passionately desire to build something for somebody else. They want to build a little safe place for themselves. They want to build a place where they can protect themselves. Walls. They build defense mechanisms. They build everything to keep people out. And the Holy One says, I want you to build something for me that I will invite everybody in. From all the nations, from all the peoples, even the Egyptians will come into this place. And it's like, wow, now you see why this is healing of the trauma. Whatever it was that caused you to retreat, to hide, to be broken, he says, I want to take the very same thing and use it as the vessel through which you not only are healed personally, but you bring healing to the world. So you say, why do you let me go through this? Because out of those ashes of what happened will come your beauty, the unique beauty that is your name, that he calls you. Without the ashes, there wouldn't be that specific type of beauty. Without the pressure, there would not be the diamond. With that, this is the way this all works in the kingdom. He says, I have got so many good plans for you. Eye has not seen, nor has ear heard, nor has it entered in the hearts of man what I have prepared, what I have intended for the children of God. I know what you suffer. I know, and I allowed it because out of it, I can bring forth the greatest level of healing to the rest of the world. And you will rejoice and delight in it in that time. Well, now you can understand why the psalmist says things like, my soul longs, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. This is my healing place. This is my empowering place. And it says, a day in your courts. A day in these things we've been talking about and meditating on and focusing on and closing our eyes and envisioning. A day in those places is better than 1,000 elsewhere. And I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness with all the gold and with all the silver and with all the precious metals and with all the precious things and with all the ideas and all the opinions and all the ideologies and all the philosophies and all the religion of the entire world. I would rather spend a day in your courts serving humbly as a doorkeeper than to be some sort of an expert in the idea of who's got what trauma and should have what stuff. It is so much more beautiful. Now that's an interesting process that we're learning, that God is reaching the point of our brokenness, touching the point of our brokenness, and out of the place of our brokenness, which He knows very well, He is calling forth from that very thing a healing power. The terumah is a level of getting buoyancy. We have been under the pressure, under the idea of terumah is to lift up. First time it's used, the verb root is used, is in the dealings of the flood. And the ark. The ark was a heavy, big piece of wood. With all these, now has all these animals and Noah and his family on it. I mean, it's not like a boat, a little plastic boat in the bathtub, which kids play with. It's on the earth. They don't have dry docks back in those days. It's right on the dirt. And so and how much water does it take? How much of a flood and thunder and lightning and crashing sounds and fearful times does it take to get that big old heavy piece of wood and all the animals and all the weight of the world on it and to cause it to uprise and lift up? That's the buoyancy. That's room. To room means to bring it up off of the dirt, out of the morass, out of the clay, and rise up. So He says, take from them a rising up. Take from them an uplifting. That which will cause them to achieve buoyancy, where they're not weighed down and tied and bound by the affairs of this brokenness and the affairs of trauma. And after it rises up and reaches that point of buoyancy, what happens? From that point forward, the ark rides upon the waves. Wherever the waves may take it, there is no rudder, there is no stern. It is wherever the boat takes it, but it is buoyed up and it's in a different realm, and God's hand of protection is upon Noah and his family and those animals. And so it is with us. Now in Psalm 27, whenever David responds to this, is one thing I desire, one thing will I seek. This one thing will I seek. What is it? You know what it is, right? That I may dwell in the house of the Holy One, in His tent, in His tabernacle, and that I may gaze upon the beauty of the Holy One. Have you gazed? Are you gazing? Do you have an access point, a vantage point in your life from which you can gaze upon? If you don't, it's a very difficult way of functioning the earth. Then you resort to religion, and you resort to theology, and you resort to philosophy and ideology and politics, and you resort to self-defense and self-protection and all these methodologies, unless you have a vantage point, a place of access from which you can gaze upon the beauty of the Holy One. And that's what David's all his psalms were about the tabernacle of David and then the temple to come that Solomon, that his son was going to build. My personal thought is that he was meaning Messiah, but Solomon heard it and he took it up and built it. But at any rate, whatever that may be, I want you to picture the idea. This is designed to give you vocabulary and to inform your ascent, your terumah, your ruma. You have to have this mentality and mindset that I can gaze upon the beauty of the Holy One. I'm not talking about physical form. I'm talking about the splendor, the welcoming, the presence, maybe just beams of light, whatever it is in the presence of the Holy One that calls you forth. But here's what we know is
When we get close to his presence, it's like a magnet. He sucks us in. He draws us in. He awakens things within us that we didn't know existed. And that no one else had ever seen besides him. But his magnet, his presence draws us in. Any thoughts about what we're going that way? All right, good. So the Holy One begins to talk about this. And after he says, David says, that I gaze upon the beauty of the Holy One, and that I may inquire, that I may have conversations, that I may have courtiership, that I may participate in conversations in his tabernacle. And he will set my feet upon a rock, and my head will be lifted up above my enemies. My enemies are still here. But I will be lifted up above them because I have connected through this vantage point, through this place of ascent, this portal of ascent to go out of the normal realm, the ordinary, the profane, the common realm, into the spiritual realm. Now, you understand how meditation works? The meditation on the Torah, not transcendental meditation, not Eastern meditation. I'm talking about Hebrew meditation. The same thing that the psalmist talked about. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. That's all we hear on this earth. Doesn't stand in the way of sinners. That's all we see, and the only place you can stand is in the way of sinners in this earth. Or sit in the seat of the scornful, which is all news is all about, and all people's conversations around tables are all about, and even all of religion seems to be all about. The seat of the scornful, who doesn't do that, but whose delight is in the Torah of the Holy One, and in his Torah he what? He meditates day and night. Now, if you don't have a meditation protocol, you're in deep, deep trouble over the long run. This is the meditation protocol the Messiah kept trying to teach us. Seek first what? Seek first the kingdom of heaven. I don't mean some ideology. I'm talking about seek first the things that are of the king's house, the king's chambers, the king's courts, the king's healing rooms. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and all of its righteousness. And all the other things will be added to you. So we can see that the Holy One's been doing this. When he gets to the Mishnah Discourse, he says, come and let them build for me a mikdash, that I may dwell in the midst of them. Then he says to Moshe in Exodus 25:22, and there, once you build it, once you take of this, the thing that the traumatized people can't do unless they've been healed. They give, and they build. When they traumatized people couldn't build for somebody else, but they built for somebody. When this happens, I will meet with you. He wants a meeting. He wants a meeting with you. He knows your name. He knows why you're here. He knows why you're still alive in this world at this day. He knows what purpose he created you to be on the earth for. And he wants a meeting with you. He gave you protocols to get out of your trauma. You got to give. Not because I need it, because you've got to give it. It is your overcoming program. You've got to build something and focus on a bigger goal. Otherwise, you'll all be fixated about your own desires, your own needs, your own fears, your own doubts. He says, now I've given you that, and here we are. There I will meet with you. Come, Holy One. And we will come to you, and we will meet. There I will meet with you, he says, and then he says, I will speak with you. Converse with us. Commune with us. Our voice, his voice will ring out into our spirits and our souls. We will speak back. He will speak with us as he meets with us. He says, I will do it from above, in English, the mercy seat. I will do it I will speak with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, the kaporet in Hebrew, from between the two cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, about everything that I'm going to give you to charge for the children of Israel. And then in Exodus 29:43, he's going to enlarge upon this. That was a conversation with Moshe about what he's going to speak to him. And then he's going to go in Exodus 29:43, talking about the brazen altar in the outer courts. Not some in the holy place where only priests can go. This is where we will all go. This is our healing room. in the chambers at the place of the brazen altar, and he says in verse 43 of chapter 49, and I will meet with B'nai Israel, the average guy, the average girl, the average child. I will meet with them there in the outer court at the brazen altar as they come, overcoming trauma by bringing things to the altar. As they come to meet with me, I will meet with them, and it says in Hebrew that I will kadash him in my glory. I will powerfully release Kedusha energy over him in the presence, in the midst of all my glory, all my beauty, all my majesty. He will be absorbing, he will be consumed by my glory and the holiness that comes with that. That, folks, is what this whole project is all about. If you think it's ceremonial law, you're going to miss a lot of good meetings. Not meetings with each other. Not meetings with church people or synagogue people or business people. I'm talking about meetings with the creator of the universe just beyond the veil, in the unseen realm, where he has told you how to go. And this is right, he wants to meet, and you're going to miss a lot of speaking that he wants to do in your life because you don't know that he wants what he wants to do. What he wants to do is immerse you in his glory, immerse you in his beauty, immerse you in his majesty, immerse you in his goodness, immerse you in everything that is of his kingdom, and immerse you in it and transform you with it, and heal you with it, and kadash you to make you a flowing vessel of holiness yourself. That's why you're here. That's why he's calling you. That's so critically important. I'm telling you, I'll pass the microphone to you, let you kind of pick up and ask a question, you can talk, whatever you want to do.
Well, does anybody have anything they want to add? I thought Marcy's hand accidentally went up, and maybe she...
No, I don't know. I'm taking it over.
I want to, and I hate to keep coming back to this. I don't hate to keep coming back to it. I understand that I understand how important this message is for those of us who are here today and who are living through the trauma that's been brought upon our culture because of all the different things that we've gone through. I get it. And God gets it. And so I want to kind of just, I want to just read this a little bit. This is from Mayo, which is one of the organizations that you don't need to know who it is. Anyway, so Mayo Clinic put this out, and it's just some information about PTSD, but the reason I want to read it is because I want to go back to how important this experience is and how important it is for us to understand that God has done something for us that provides us with the healing we need to be able to build what he's put in us to build. And it's really necessary to do that. So this is just talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. But it says it's a mental health condition that's triggered, it's probably mentioned being triggered, that's triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Now listen to the symptomology associated with this. The symptoms may include flashbacks, right? Nightmares, severe anxiety, as well as uncomfortable thoughts about the events. I want you to think about that for a minute, because that's where these people were. Right? When he called them out of Egypt, these things were there. This is what they were dealing with. As he's calling us out of the culture, as he's calling us to regain footing and to understand, who we are, and to live that way, and to live according to how he's called us to live and function. This is why this is so important. This is why David wanted to be in the house of the Lord. This is why he longed for this house. It's because he needed to deal with, if you would, the flashbacks, the nightmares, the severe anxiety. I can't tell you how many people I meet on a day-to-day basis, and maybe because I work in healthcare, that are struggling this way. And these are even people who are part of what we call the quote unquote the church, right? And it doesn't matter what community of believers you're from, whether you're part of a Messianic Jewish community, whether you're part of the Christian church. People are dealing with trauma. They're dealing with anxiety. They're dealing with the stress of what the future holds. Where are we going? What are our retirement looks like? All this stuff. But I like the way Papa B is bringing this in, because if we really shema, right, we're going to find ourselves lifted above what's happening in the earth right now. And we won't find ourselves obsessing over what's going on in our world, because we are abandoned to this process. And this is so important, because when he called us out of Egypt, he was not just calling you and I as individuals, but he was calling our entire bloodlines. The reason we need to answer this call is because we have children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. We have family. We have people associated with and people that will be impacted by what's happening in the earth right now. And so we can't get lost and obsessed with what's going on, because this is who we are. We're being called into a greater purpose, and we're being called to rise above what's happening in the earth right now, because I like what you said on one of the Facebook posts. The reason we're set aside for such a life as this is because as he sets us apart, it increases our potential to shine light. Right? And it's really important, I can't stress this enough, it's really important that we be able to, maybe I should say I've worked in healthcare for over 20-something years. And
mental health care, a lot of that.
A lot of that, 17 years of that is behavioral health. And I've seen the methodology that's used to address mental health. Right? I've seen the medication therapy. I've seen shock treatments. I've seen you name it. I've been a part of it. I've also helped to use that. Hallucinogenics. I get it, right?
Yeah.
But I've never heard a therapist say this. And you are not going to hear a therapist say this. They don't get paid to say this. Are you listening to me?
Amen.
You're not going to hear ICD-10 codes here.
Right.
This is the greatest, most powerful antidote to deal with the stress, the disillusionment, the confusion, the hurt, the pain, the anxiety. Amen. This is how we deal with it, right?
Amen.
And you will not have to. I'm not saying don't do it. Understand? This is where I work, right? I get paid to work in, so please don't misunderstand. Don't get this confused. Don't take my job. I gotta have a job, right?
They'll fire him for hearing this.
So I'm not telling you don't go. Let me go on record. I'm not telling you not going. What I am saying, that there is no greater methodology for therapy than what we're hearing right here today.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you.
Yeah, come on. Up, Mark.
Yeah. Take your time. Take your time. Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying. Harold and I were just discussing this morning about someone that we know that just can't seem to bust through the trauma. And I appreciate what you said about being the light, because all this person knows is the screaming of the pain. They can't get there right now. And I know that's been some of us maybe at one point, or I think probably at least we know somebody that's there, that all that's right in front of them all the time is the trauma or the pain or the hurt, or it's just louder than anything else right now.
The voices that scream the loudest.
Yes, that's what gets the attention.
Right.
And so it's just so important for us to be able to be that one that can lead them to this place eventually. And so I wanted to say that. Another thing that I wanted to comment on was the conditioning over 400 years of these people in Egypt. And I totally agree that they were completely traumatized, but they had kind of settled in, I think, like we do, to the acclimation of the period. And I don't think that many of them realized how traumatized they really were, how damaged they really were by the soaking in of the culture and the subtle changes over the generations that we experience now. We're acclimated to this world, and things don't shock us in our spirit like maybe they should still shock us. Maybe we just expect the world to be like this, and it doesn't shock us enough to cry out to the Lord that we shouldn't be traumatized. We shouldn't be acclimated to a traumatized society. Right. And then finally, and then I'll shut up. Finally, we started out talking about God calling us by name, God calling our bloodlines, God changing our names. We walk through this world with this name that we've been given, and we identify with our trauma. We identify with our circumstances. We identify by our illness. I'm the appendectomy in room 4. And if I'm not mistaken, that one of the main responsibilities of the father is to reveal the identity to their children in the Hebrew culture. Right. And so when we hear him call us by name, and when Moshe delivered the 10 words from Mount Sinai, he was re-identifying these people. He's saying, this is who you are. You're not that people that were in Egypt for 400 years. You're not that trauma. You're not that circumstances. You're not the appendectomy in room 4. You are Hadassah. You are Moshe. Yeah. You are a high priest. You are a warrior. You're a beautiful flower. Whatever that beauty realm is, he knows it. And he knows who you are and how you fit into that beauty realm. And that's his function as a father, is to reveal to you your identity and who you really are.
Amen. Amen.
You know, I think a lot of, and I tried to minor in psychology and did this process for a while before I realized I don't think I can handle that, and went into, did this law, the things that I've done. But one of the things that it seems to be, the focus is on identifying the original trauma. I don't think you have to work that hard on it. Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, it tells you what it is by virtue of the response to what triggers it. If you know what triggers it, it doesn't matter the exact moment or the date. What happened is there was a point at which the individual, what trauma means is, the individual didn't have coping mechanisms that were sufficient to cover whatever it was. Didn't have a defense mechanism that would protect it, or a logic or reasoning sequence that could make sense of it, and therefore it just something snapped, and a fragmentation of the soul began to take place. And he had to come up with a whole alternate reality to be able to deal, to stay alive in that process. That's what trauma is. And depending on how you react to trauma, like the Israel, when they came out of Egypt, the first thing he did was let them go without food. And let them go without water. And at first there was no pillar of fire and cloud to lead them. They didn't know where they were going. They'd never been out of Egypt before. They're out of Egypt in the desert. They got a phone call Moshe. It took to Etam, the second stop before they get the pillar of fire. He said, I'm going to let you be triggered by whatever will trigger you. And it will reveal where your trauma is. So we don't have to look too awful much about trying to uncover that moment whenever the abuse took place or the thing happened in our childhood or in the womb. We don't have to go back to all that trouble. That's the psychologist's way of doing business and making money. But what we need to do is say, where are you triggering and what is going on? And how can we address that very issue? I want to bring this, before we take our break, I want to bring this into play here. This is, again, a psalm. The Psalms provide us with the vocabulary. They were all designed for the tabernacle. They were all designed for people who were in and around the tabernacle getting the healing that they were supposed to get. All right? So don't think of Psalms as some theological book.
some doctrinal study. This is a book about healing in the healing rooms. And so we get to Psalm 91, and Psalm 91 goes, most of you know it, but I'll read it. He who dwells in the
Secret.
You know what the secret place is, right? The secret place is not your closet, although that'll work for you unless you're in a pinch. The secret place is the tabernacle, is the place beyond the veil where you go to meet with him. He who dwells in the secret place, the Seter, the place of concealment, the place in the unseen realm of the Most High, will abide, will rest, will sojourn, will spend some time under the shadow of the Almighty. Oh, that's going to be where the energy comes. That's going to be where the healing comes. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say of the Holy One, this is your vocabulary of healing. I will say of the Holy One, He is my refuge. I am not thinking about the trauma, I'm thinking about the refuge. He is my refuge, Machseh in Hebrew, the safe place to which one flees. And He is my fortress, a lair, a stronghold, a headquarters, a war room, a place of regathering. He is my God. In Him will I trust. Surely, surely He will deliver me from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. Whatever it is the world throws at me or is trying to throw at me or to say is my due and what I'm owed, whatever it is, He will deliver me from that. You talk about healing vocabulary, healing language, and understanding who you are in His eyes and what He wants to do. He will surely deliver me from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. And He will cover.
Yeah.
Now, this word is sakak in Hebrew, and it's the same thing you do to put things on top of your sukkah. So that when you put the skak on the top of the sukkah to give you shade, to be your dwelling place, to give you this sense of comfort and belonging, like making it your home, He will do this. He will cover sakak. And we even interface sukkah material, thatch, over us and with His feathers. And under His wings, we will take refuge. And His truth, His eternal things will be our sword, our shield, and our buckler. And I will not fear the terror of night, of darkness. Now, this is the promise of the sukkah, of the secret place, the promise of the tabernacle. This is why it doesn't go away. Because you don't have one physically on earth. He knew He wasn't going to have one physically on earth for a long time. Of all the years since this was given, there are about 400 of those years out of 3,000 years that there was one physically standing on the earth. He knew that before. I knew what I was getting into when I called you. When I gave you these instructions about taking a terumah and building a place, a mikdash and a mishkan, He knew that for 2,600 of our 4,000, 3,000 years, there wouldn't be a physical place we could go to, tabernacle or temple. We would have to find it ourselves. We would have to find the access point. Do you know the access point? Well, this is the question, I think, in the movie, the Disney movie that my granddaughters love so much, Frozen. This silly snowman, actually no, the sister comes out. This sister comes to the other sister's house, room where she's hiding, and she says, "Do you want to build a..." I can't say it on the camera. You understand it? I have to have you think it and understand where we're going with it.
Yes.
Now, that's not the real question. The real question is, do you want to build a Mishkan? Do you want to build a tabernacle? Do you want to build it for yourself and for your family? You want to build it for the world. You see, one day, Tony's talking about because he knows the medical field. He knows the ways in which people are treated for trauma, how they're treated for PTSD, traumatic situation. He knows how this happens. And right now it's dependent upon all sorts of counseling and therapies and hallucinogenic drugs and other drugs to calm you down and all these different protocols. But one day, those won't even be available. The tribulation season, the times that are coming, we won't have any of that stuff. We won't have a bunch of medicines, a bunch of doctors, a bunch of hospitals we can go to. You know what we're going to have to do? We're going to find the secret place, the healing room.
Yeah.
And when we do so, we will be the ones who are guiding and directing people into it because it's our natural habitat. It's who we are, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I just have a little quick testimony of the time and season it is. It's all coming together. The medical community is very much a part of the culture of this world. We're grateful for it. When you need it, it's really good.
Yeah.
But we get so used to depending on taking our pills regularly and this, that, and other thing, and running to the doctor for everything. But my point is, last night I was going over to my sister's house, and we hung out for the Sabbath and lit candles and stuff. But when I got there, I was carrying the cake. My 7-year-old granddaughter was carrying my shofar, and I tripped going up the stairs and fell really hard on my knee on the concrete. And the cake was fine, the shofar was fine, but for just
That wasn't fun.
for just a minute, my knee hurt like the dickens. I got in, and just the Spirit of the Lord, and it's sundown Sabbath, and I sat down among my sisters, and we started talking about the Lord, and I forgot about it completely. I got up this morning and I thought, I'm going to have to take a shower because I'm going to be stiff and sore. I got out of bed, I was not stiff and sore.
Oh, amen.
The Lord healed my knees, and I've had problems with my knees for a long time. I think it was a reset. I think Gail said it was a reset.
There you go.
So I just want to give praise to the Lord.
Amen.
He's good.
Amen. That was it. I want to just give a scripture here, Papa B. So I know we're getting ready for break, and so I was just thinking about when Papa B said there are going to be times where some of these things that we've relied upon and learned to depend upon will not always be accessible. We won't always have access to these things. And because I work where I work, I can see some of those things happening and starting to develop the shortages and all that. But even when we think about that, if we fast forward, we understand that the people here, those called by name, called up and out of, they tend to get into a place of rebelling against the Shekinah and the Mikdash. They rebel against what that means, and they're driven out of the land, and they begin to assimilate into all the different cultures around. As Marcy said, it's happening to us. We're assimilating into the culture, and that's why we've normalized trauma, right? And now they're trying to kind of shock us into understanding that trauma should not be normalized, right? It has to be addressed. It's a very dangerous and difficult place to be. The Lord in His mercy, even after driving these people out, right? Even after chastising or in the midst of chastising and bringing consequences, as we all get into some of the things that we're going to see as a consequence of our behavior. It's a consequence of us depending upon the pharmaceutical industry and all of these type of things. So we have those things as a consequence, but even in that, there is the mercy of God. I just want to read just a little bit of God's mercy because Papa B just read from Psalms 91, and it just gave us this beautiful picture of how important this secret place is. The Father knows how important this place is, and so this verse seems to highlight that. In Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 16, he says, "Therefore say, thus says the Lord God, although I have cast them far off among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come." I thought that was...
Amen. Amen. Well, that's our great moment. I hope with being to us, even in our culture, even in where we are now, He is the little sanctuary. He is the little Mishkan, the little tabernacle to us. And He offers that safety, that place of secret place. So we're going to take a break. We're going to be back at, say, 5 minutes or so until 12. And we'll finish our session at that time. We got some more beautiful things to discuss with you, and hopefully y'all will be thinking of what you want to talk about in that time as well. See you in a few moments.